Welcome to the Paddle and Fin podcast, the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment, where we try to improve our skills as an angler by learning new techniques or improving the ones we already know. I'm your host, Ryan Milford. Welcome back to Paddle and Fin, the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment. I'm your host, Ryan, and tonight we have a really cool person on here. Somebody who has caught, I didn't believe this number. I thought it was a typo. I had to confirm it, and he confirmed it with me. Over 23,000 bass. We have a man by the name of Bill Schultz here. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Schultz.
Well, Ryan, thanks, and please call me Bill.
Okay. I'm from the South, you know. I'm just raised, you know, do that by for respect.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. You're so much younger than me.
But yeah. So, first thing I want to ask, you know, before we get too far into it, that number, you know, it was over 23,000 bass you've caught in a period of
26 years.
26 years. But is that a combination of bass? Is that all smallmouth? Because I know you target smallmouth a lot. Is that smallmouth, largemouth, all that?
No, I'll tell you, Ryan. You know, it's interesting, and we'll pick on another little bit of a guy I've never met, but we've communicated, fellow Jackson pro staffer, Joey Monteleone, who's from Tennessee. And Joey and I are the same age, and he's caught overall more bass than me, but the majority of his bass are largemouth. All of my 23,372 caught and released are smallmouth bass. So yeah, you know, it's one of those things, and I love to have people kind of tongue in cheek give me a hard time about it. But you know, when we were talking earlier, you know, like a lot of us, you know, I started fishing when I was a kid. You know, my dad took my brothers and I and fishing for perch on Lake Mendota in Madison, and you get through high school, you go into college, and in my case, I was on the swimming team at the University of Wisconsin. And you kind of get away from it. And then you get into your career and you've got the bug. It's buried there. It's buried deep inside of you. And for me, sitting in a little rowboat up in Hayward, Wisconsin, the muskie capital up there, the Hall of Fame capital of freshwater fishing, in 1991, the bug bit me again. So 1992 at a sports show, I bought a 16.5-foot boat with a Mariner engine and started fishing again in 1992, and mostly, you know, perch, bluegills, some largemouth bass. And in May of 1994, which is interesting because it was the day that I got called by my boss of almost my entire rest of my career from the Medical College of Wisconsin. He called me while I was on the water to offer me the job I then had for over 21 years. So I'm on Delavan Lake, and I caught 90 undersized walleyes, and I caught 14 of what I assumed were smallmouth bass. And I thought, wow, these are really fun. And so it took me probably until 1998 to pretty much target totally smallmouth bass. The log thing, hey, we can have a little fun with this. I wrote a feature for Badger Sportsman this last summer on keeping a fishing log. And I joked about the fact that when I was a kid growing up in the YMCA, all the big weightlifters would write down all their workouts in a notebook. And then I got to my swimming days at Wisconsin, and I kept a 3x5 card in my wallet, keeping track of those yards that we swam every day in practice. And then after that, it was racquetball. That's been a big thing for me. I'm in the Racquetball Hall of Fame in Wisconsin. And I kept a log of who I played, you know, a few little comments. Did I win? Did I lose? What were the dates? So jokingly, it's pretty darn obvious that if I'm going to start fishing, I'm going to keep a log. And I'm actually happy that I did. And so again, about 1998, that's about all I fished for. Smallmouth bass. Took me about 4 years to convert totally to smallmouth. I still fish for largemouth, on some waters and in ponds and stuff. But it's, I've kept this log. And for me, every year my goal is 1,000 smallmouth. And quite honestly, last year it took me my last day out to push over 1,000, and this year I missed by 36 fish.
But that's insane to me, because you're talking about catching 1,000 fish in 1 year, and in 6 or 7 years of me bass fishing, I don't even know if I've caught 100 total. So,
well, the other thing, Ryan, and I'll joke about this. I think as I get older, keeping track of the number of fish I catch every day has got to be good for my mind. And what's really good is if I'm out with someone else or even two people. Now that's mental gymnastics, keeping track of mine and theirs.
I just tell them to keep up with their own.
Yeah, I know. I have to tell you though, you talk about, I think back and, I've done a lot of fishing on the rivers in southern and southwest Wisconsin, as well as up on, fortunately, the very beautiful big waters of Lake Michigan and Sturgeon Bay, where I now have, my wife and I have a small home up there the last 5 years. But the interesting thing is in 2007, I can tell you that I caught 1,900 plus smallmouth on the Milwaukee River alone, just in my waders. I was averaging 63 smallmouth every 4 hours I was on the water. It was incredible.
That's crazy. Now, does it count if you catch the same smallmouth twice?
We got a guy at the, hey, Ryan, we've got a guy at the gym who's a retired postal worker. And every time I see him, he asks me to say hi to that one smallmouth I keep catching over and over. I think that when they start coming out and going, hey, Bill, just leave me alone. I know you catch and release, but just leave me alone. Then maybe I'm catching the same one more than once. But, for the most part, these in the waters that I fish, probably I'm catching different fish. Although I have a picture in one of my river smallie files of about a 13-inch fish that's got a little jig right in its tongue. Well, that's the little jig that was on that fish when I broke the line about a half hour before that. So occasionally, I'm sure I catch the same fish twice.
Yeah, those numbers just blow my mind. Let's see here. Sorry, I went blank.
It's okay.
Okay. So with smallmouth, I don't have a lot of previous history with smallmouth. I caught my first one this year, and it was very small, maybe 11, 12 inches. Then I caught my second one. I've only caught the two, and so the second one's my personal best smallmouth. It was like 17 and a half inches.
That's great.
So I don't have a lot of history with smallmouth. I actually haven't done a ton of research. I know a little bit about the fish, but whenever you're looking for smallmouth, you particularly, what kind of structure are you generally looking for with them?
Well, we're talking, like two different areas. And if you look at that almost 23,500 smallmouth, about 13,000 have come on rivers. And the rivers I'm talking about are not big rivers where you're out there in a boat or a tunnel hull or something like that. I'm in waders or in a kayak. So on a river, you're looking for, really different things. I mean, years ago, I'd cross a bridge on the Wisconsin River and I'd go, what a beautiful river. Now I cross a bridge on a river and I go, wow, look at those down trees. Wow, look at that sandbar. Look at the downriver side of those rocks. So when you're looking at rivers, you're looking for, in many cases, places where the smallies can hide. Because most of the rivers that I fish are pretty shallow. We're talking a deep area, maybe being 4 or 5 feet. On a river like the Wisconsin River, which I don't fish enough, yeah, you might go from 2 or 3 feet down to 10 or 12 feet, but not a lot deeper. So you're looking for, rocks along the shore where the fish are hanging near the rocks because the current's pushing food out. Or you're looking at the downriver side of some rapids or some faster moving water because that's where the food's being pushed to. You're looking at years middle 2000s. A friend and I each route. I had a tunnel hull for a year or so, and we're on the Wisconsin River, and we pull up on a sandbar, and in the picture I've got, you can't see that the sandbar does kind of a U, but we stood out at that U with the current blowing by, catching fish after fish after fish right out of the current being blocked by the sandbar. So rivers, you're looking for that kind of structure. Usually places where the food's coming to them, being brought to them, or where they're hiding behind structures. Certainly in the warmer months, you'll get fish that'll be cruising. But, so rivers, you're looking for those types of things. Now I don't fish much in between. And this is interesting because, most people are going to fish if they fish rivers, and they might get to the big water once in a while, but they're also maybe fishing local lakes that, 200, 300, 400 acres or whatever. But it's been mostly these rivers, smaller rivers in Southwest Wisconsin, even like the Milwaukee River, which is actually, pretty shallow, or the big water up on Lake Michigan or Sturgeon Bay, which is Green Bay. And up there, you're looking for totally different things. I mean, depending on the time of year, in the spring, once things start warming, the fish start coming in shallower to get ready to spawn. And typically up there, you don't have to work too hard at finding locations because so much of the bottom is covered with rocks. And that's what they're looking for. Certainly some areas have boulders, and the bigger rocks, fish will hang by those. They'll also hang sometimes at a first drop off. You might be going out 6, 7, 8 feet, and it might drop down to 10 or 12 feet. And so, it's hit and miss. And then certainly, water temperature is so important. I wing it a lot. I hate to say that for all you guys that, go nuts with your electronics and go nuts with everything else. I do tend to wing it. And I think the rivers are easy to read. When I do my river talks, I say this, once you learn what to look for, rivers are extremely easy to read. You start looking at lakes and bigger water, and especially super clear water like we have up in Lake Michigan or Green Bay. Then, I take my 26 years of fishing up there, I pretty much know where to go. I would have to say that some of the new things, and we'll talk about these, but for me, for years, I only fished up there in May and June, and that's all shallow water fishing, 2 to 6, 7 feet of water. And I'll talk what works good in those depths. But now I got a place up there. I'm up there, 125, 30 days a year and especially during the season. I said to my wife, Becky, I have to learn how to catch some of these fish in a little deeper water, because once we get out of June and into July and August and September, the fish are going deeper. And by deep, I'm not talking 60, 70 feet. I might be talking 15 to 20 feet. Right. And in the fall, it might be, 25 to 30 feet. I typically, because I'm such a catch and release nut, and I think what you're even going to hear me talking about tonight, for the most part, is almost everything has one hook, or if it's got a treble, it's a little bitty treble. So I try to take care of the fish, so I try not to fish too deep, just for the sake, I don't want to injure them, bringing them out of 40, 50, 60 feet of water. So
I completely respect that. I'm the type, I'm catch and release also, and maybe some crappie or catfish if I were to go catch some of those. I don't mind eating those with bass, right, though. I'm strictly catch and release, and try to let them go, let them grow type deal.
Right.
So I respect that. But one thing I did want to say, with that water being so shallow that you're talking about on those rivers, what are some lures you like to use to target that? Like I feel like top water would be really good in all that.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what my first lure that did phenomenal and still does phenomenal on rivers. And out of those thousands of smallmouth bass, based on what I was using at the time, I'm holding in my hand something that I've probably caught 5+ thousand smallmouth with alone. And this is the Rebel teeny wee crawfish. It's a 1¼ inch, 1/10 ounce little guy that swims kind of nose down. It comes with these little number 14 treble hooks. And because they do bend and break, probably 12 years ago, I began changing out the back one to a number 10, just to give me a little stronger hook. So anyways, when I talk rivers, the Rebel teeny wee crawfish, it swims kind of bill down. It's got a great little profile. It's got little bitty rattles in it, and it wiggles like mad. So you've got incredible vibration that it's an attractant. It's got a nice profile. And the nice thing is, swimming like this, nose down, even if you get a hang up, usually it just floats to the top because it is a floater diver. But again, I've fished this always. It's always with me. And what you've got is, you probably, for this, just to fill everyone in, probably a light action, 6.5, 7-foot rod with a 8 or 10 pound braid with a fluorocarbon leader. That's how I fish it. And I swim it usually against the current or cross current, because even though they talk about fish waiting for bait to come to them, I have to tell you, in my unscientific studies, dozens and dozens to nothing, swimming at cross current or against the current, giving it even more vibration and wiggle, catches more fish. And it also, I think it's a surprise lure. It, not only do they hear it and feel it, it surprises them. So the Rebel teeny wee crawfish. The other one, I don't go much bigger. Last year they came out with the middle craw, which is just a little bigger, probably number 8 hooks. I still like the little guy. And you mentioned top water, Ryan. Probably, I don't know, I can tell you the guy, he's the vice president out at Regis University, a guy named Roby Blust, a great smallie guy. I don't know why he lives in Colorado now, but he gave me a small little buzzbait, like this Booyah Pond Magic buzzbait. He said, Bill, this thing is really fun. And I got to tell you, swimming it perpendicular to shore so that you're surprising the fish, this little guy is a great small river smallie lure. Now, granted, sometimes you're bringing it back, you get 2 and 3 hits, and because you've only got the one hook and they're slamming it on top water, you occasionally lose fish. But when I got started with rivers, it was the teeny wee crawfish. And then, do you mind? Should I just keep going and tell you about the river lures?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I did want to say real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
When I very first started bass fishing, I went to Walmart and picked up a few things. I had no clue what to get, and one of the things I got was a little setup from Rebel. Had like 3 or 4 lures in it, and one of them was that crawfish, and I don't think I've ever used it.
Well, let me tell you what they are. Rebel had them. They're called the critter baits, and they had a bee, a grasshopper, the crawfish, and 1 or 2 others. And obviously, because Rebel has been very happy with the amount of fish I've caught on their lures, I have all of them. But yeah, you're right. That's what they call the critter baits. And they actually all, it's funny. They're all are similar. They're all the same size. They all got the bill. But I got to tell you, for whatever reason, the crawfish of the group is the best. Because rivers, the fish feed on crawfish. You've got that profile. Certainly, it doesn't look like exactly like a real crawfish, but I think it's just better than the other ones. The other thing that you look about evolving into I used a teeny wee crawfish for years and did great, still do great. But then evolving, we have a company just west of here, 40 miles in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, called Acme Tackle. And they own Kalen's. And Kalen's is best known for their lunker grubs. And I can still remember June of 2007. I'm on the St. Croix pro staff, and I'm out near Sturgeon Bay, and there was another pro staffer, and my brother was with me. We went over and, hey, how you doing? And he said, hey, I'm doing great. Well, he was doing better than we were. And so we said, well, what are you using? And he said, I'm using the Kalen's lunker grub. Well, really? And he said, here. And he reached in and literally double hand scooped probably 40 or 50 of them. Obviously, he was getting them from the company. Here, he goes, my brother said, hey, listen, can we pay you for those? No, just take them. Well, I got to tell you, our day got better. And the next day was my last day up in Sturgeon Bay. I parked my boat at about 10 o'clock in the morning when I ran out of what I had. I almost killed me, 6 or 7 blocks to the tackle shop, bought some more Kalen's lunker grubs. And from 2007 in the fall until still now, this isn't just a great presentation, it's phenomenal. And what I'm showing you right here is the 4-inch 4-inch blue pearl salt and pepper. This is my best river color. My best lake color, clear water, is the smoked salt and pepper. Now, Ryan, I know you're trying to believe me about the number of smallmouth I caught, but let me tell you this. In 2014, which I and others think was a peak for the smallmouth in Sturgeon Bay, in May and June, averaging 43 smallmouth every 8 hours I was on the water. And these aren't the 11, 12-inch river fish. I caught 714 smallmouth in May and June. Every single fish, 714 fish, came on the Kalen's smoke, salt, and pepper 4-inch lunker grub on, unfortunately, the company's out of business, either a 1/16 or 3/32 light jigs with a long hook shank, gopher tackle. Gopher used to make the best jigs in the world. They're out of business, unfortunately. But the deal with the Kalen's, thick body, the long shank hook comes right down to the bottom of the body. And here's the deal. Either the 4 and 5 inch have a long, wide, thin, wispy tail that when you swim it as slow as possible and steady, and I've got some pictures from rivers where I just held it down in the current, it undulates unbelievable. So in 2007, I added the blue pearl salt and pepper to my arsenal. And I can tell you that year 2007, that fall, that whole year I caught a lot of fish on the rivers, but man, in the fall it really picked up with this. So this is a great river presentation and a great lake presentation. Again, 6'6" at the shortest, usually 7 foot to 7'6", medium light, extra fast or fast action rod is your best with this. Again, 2,500 size or 2,000 size reel with small diameter braid and a fluorocarbon leader in the clear water. That fluorocarbon leader I used to say 20 to 30 inches. I now put sometimes a 4 or 5 footer on. So anyways, that's Kalen's lunker grub is a great presentation.
I was going to say, with that little jig, you said that the company was out of business. From what I could see of it, it almost looks like a Ned rig head, just smaller.
No, actually, here's thinner. The difference. I'm going to show you. I am prepared. Here, we'll show you the best Ned rig jig from Z-Man. There's the one. It's a 1/10, I think. See the difference? For the Kalen's and for swim baits, you got that longer hook shank that goes all the way down through the body. But for the Ned rig, which, here we go, Z-Man TRD with this is a 1/15 ounce. jig, it's much smaller. So, but it's similar to where, and we'll talk about another phenomenal presentation that I just had unbelievable success with in September and October this year, but we'll get to that.
Well, was there, before the show, you were kind of showing me a little bit of these lures, and there really wasn't that many to it. Did we just go over all of them?
No, we didn't. But I'll
okay.
tell you a quick story. I'm now, I've been on the Mercury Pro staff for quite a few years, and I used to be with Crestliner. Now I'm with Yarcraft, just because, for me, the fiberglass, a little better in the rough water for me up on that big lake. But 2-3 years ago, my very beautiful Crestliner came with 6 Plano boxes that fit under the passenger console. And picking up the boat in April, I put 6 Plano boxes filled with everything that you guys and everyone else would think you should fish smallies for. I literally did not touch one of those Plano boxes until November, when I took the boat in to trade it in. What I try to do is I've tried to, and this, on Saturday at noon, the big Chicagoland fishing show, I'll be doing a talk on the Ned rig and smallie potpourri. And you're going to see a whole lot fewer lures talked about than most smallmouth presentations. I literally, for the rivers, I showed you the buzzbait, the teeny wee crawfish, the Kalen's lunker grub. And quite honestly, I can literally add one more thing to my river arsenal. And many of the listeners have heard about the Ned rig. I heard about the Ned rig. I was introduced to the Ned rig in June of 2016 with a friend up in Door County. We fished a few areas shallow and caught a few little fish. And the next time I tried the Ned rig was August 1st of 2016. And here's the case where I said I need to learn how to catch fish deeper. So I'm talking 1/15th ounce jig. And I take my boat and I drive a mile offshore to an island. And I love my spot lock on my Minn Kota trolling motors. And so I hit the spot lock. And I pretty much sat in the area of, let's take 2 or 3 25-yard swimming pools, an area about that big, for 7 hours. And I caught 62 smallmouth bass. And I'm going, and I'm not from Tennessee or Missouri, but I'm going, whoa, this is pretty good. And this is all in 10 to 20 feet of water. I don't usually do that well in that deep. Well, we're later August, and I'm in southwest Wisconsin on a little bitty river. Deep part of the river is 4 feet. So I'm there for 4 hours, Ryan. The first 15 fish I caught were on the Booyah Pond Magic buzzbait. I then, between the TRD, 2 3/4 inches, and the little tubes, which is 2 3/4 inches, for the next 3 hours, I caught an additional 60 plus smallmouth. I'm going, holy mackerel. And what was neat, whereas the Kalen's phenomenal. The teeny wee crawfish is phenomenal. The buzzbait's phenomenal. But if the water, let's say the bigger fish are in 4 feet of water, and I'm swimming this in 1.5 feet or 2, I may be missing the real big fish. So that day, not only was I catching dozens more fish, I was catching bigger fish. Now I'm talking bigger for a little river, meaning 2 to 3 pounds, which for a little bitty river is pretty good. Third time, September 2nd, same island, 5 hours, spot lock on, 10 to 20 feet of water, 52 smallmouth. So now I've got 3 experiences in 31 days, and I'm going, this is unbelievable. And I can tell you that from August 1st of 2016 to about September 1st of this year, most of those 3,000+ smallmouth have come on mostly the Z-Man Shrooms jig, mostly the TRD, finesse TRD, and about 98% in one color, and I'm holding it right here, green pumpkin goby. Yet a lot of the colors work. Pretty incredible in my mind, and this is both rivers and lakes.
Question I got: what you got in your hand is the traditional Ned rig head.
Yep.
Have you tried the type with like the little weed guards on them, like the little wire weed guards? Have you tried those out?
You know, Ryan, I haven't, because the rivers that I fish are not weedy, they're rocky. And let me tell you, for guys that have never tried this and fish a lot of rocky rivers, if you're trying to use a tube that's laying down on the rocks, maybe bouncing along, or even another great presentation, which is like, you know, wacky rigging a yum dinger or something like that, it's gonna get caught in the rocks. The Ned rig gets caught in the rocks, but because this little guy is buoyant, it stands up like this, so it tends to bounce rather than get stuck as much. In the water I fish on Green Bay and Lake Michigan, yes, especially on Green Bay, on every rock on the bottom, there's scum, maybe a 1/2 inch thick. So as good as tubes are up there, it's sometimes tough to fish tubes. But the neat thing about this, the Ned rig again, you're saying, Bill, that's big water. You gotta be fishing in rough water. You know, the answer is about 90% of the time I'm in 2-footers or bigger. And there are days that I'm literally in 4-footers fishing a 1/15 ounce jig off the bottom in 15 to 20 feet of water. You're going, how do you do that? Well, how you do it, sometimes I go to the 1/10, still very light. How I do it is, thankfully, the Minn Kotas with the spot lock, that holds me in place. You won't believe it. 3-4-footers. It holds you like it's magic. And then the boat swings with the wind blowing into the bow. That allows me to fish off the back of the boat, even with this little light jig. So I've not, and up there, again, there aren't weeds on the bottom like you're talking about, Ryan, the kind that are going to catch this. So I don't need the little weed guard. So I've really not used, I've not used the weed guard once. I pretty much stick with these. And people are really amazed when I tell them, guys, I have to tell you, I'm fishing 1/15 and occasionally 1/10 ounce. And they go, I don't believe you. I go, well, the only way I can do it is because my boat can be held and I can fish with the wind at my back and my line, you know, it's not being blown sideways or any other way. So that's what I do. And it works just great.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just curious because I recently picked up some of the ones with the weed guard. But that 17.5 inch smallie that I caught, it was actually off a Ned rig. It was on the Z-Man green pumpkin color.
There, you know, the thing, and I just talked with Joey Prohaska today, who's the, you know, one of their key guys with Z-Man. And I told him you know, obviously Z-Man products and the jigs are going to be big in my talk in Chicago with talking about the Ned rig. And I mentioned our podcast. And I mean, certainly I mostly use the green pumpkin goby, but you know, there are other colors. I mean, here's the molten craw. I mean, it's a great color. I think similar to the teeny wee crawfish, I do think sometimes the color is less important than the motion of the lure. And what happens with these, you take a river or you take Lake Michigan or Green Bay where you've got current, this little guy's sitting on the bottom. And it's not just sitting like this. It's sitting to where the current is making it move and making it almost impossible for those smallies not wanting to grab on.
What's your personal best smallmouth?
Well, I wish I could say I'd caught one over 7 pounds. I have not. When I do, I will have a replica mount made. In fact, Ryan, it'll be a lot like that great big bass you have behind you on the wall. Oh wait, that's Billy Bass that sings. No, I have to tell you, I've caught up in there in Sturgeon Bay, about 650 or 700 fish between 4 and 6 1/4. My best, I have a number of fish in that 6 1/4 range. Um, it's really sometimes the time of the year, that very early part of the year, the opening of the season. In certain areas, you've got that possibility of the seven plus pounder. For me, it's been 3 or 4 fish in that 6 to maybe 6 1/3 pound range. Lengthwise, probably 8 or 10 fish, 20 inches to or 20, almost 22. So I'm still waiting, for my 7 pounder that again will be pictured, weighed, and a replica.
Well, whenever you get that, I want to see it because, to me, a, 4.5, 5 pounder in a smallmouth is a really nice fish.
It is. I don't mean to downplay because
no, I didn't.
No. My way of doing it, if you look at all the pictures that I have that I use in my talks or just to show people, if I'm up in Sturgeon Bay, a fish needs to be 4 pounds before I take a picture. And I do not, as you would expect, I love it. And I have many, many top guide friends up there, some of the best in the world. And, you got the guys in the boats that say, you know what, man, we were out there, we caught 10, 20 inchers. And I go, what? Yeah, the guide said, man, that's a nice 20 incher. And as my other guide friends say, they need a new scale. But, they all, they pick up an 18.5, 19. Hey, man, that's a nice 20 incher. But I think when I'm on a river, if I've got my, I carry my D10 Canon, which is a waterproof camera, I'll take selfies sort of with, or holding them out at arm's length, 2 pounds when I'm on rivers. But this year, I had a great, exciting time in I busted my butt to paddle through some damn big waves to get up a place called the Mink River, which I don't like to fish in the spring because it gets hammered. But in the fall, I went way up the Mink River in my kayak on September 27th. And amongst the numbers of fish I caught was a 20 3/4 that weighed 6 pounds. And that fish, if you saw the picture, it looks like about a 7.5 pounder. But I do carry the Boga grip, so you don't catch me exaggerating on weights either.
That's awesome. Me, I fish in a kayak. It's the kayak fishing podcast. A lot of us, I try to, if I catch a big fish, I got a scale on the kayak to weigh it, but we're usually going by length.
Yeah.
And what was it? I believe it was around September, October. One of the other guys on the podcast, Brian Schiller, he caught one that was about a smallmouth, about 20 3/4 inches.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much his weighed, but that one was pretty nice. That same weekend, I believe it was, I caught my personal best largemouth, which was 21.
Oh, that's great.
Well,
I was going to say, the one thing is, and again, I mean, fishermen are noted for exaggerating. But one of the great things about the kayak tournaments and kayak fishing in general is with the trough, there's no BSing. If I've got that 20 3/4 inch fish and I've got it there up against the end of the trough and there it is, 20 3/4. And yes, I do carry the Boga grip, so I get a chance to do both, length and weight. On the big water, personally, I think weight trumps length. On rivers, sometimes length trumps weight. And the reason is that in Sturgeon Bay, I've got pictures in my Sturgeon Bay talk where I've got a 16.25-inch smallmouth that weighs 4 pounds and a 17.5-inch fish that goes way over 4.5. I mean, it's almost unbelievable how fat some of these fish can be. So, you know, up there, if you ever get up there with me, Ryan, you're going to go, you know, wow, is this a fat 19-inch? And I'm going, let's get a weight on that, because that 19-incher could be 5 pounds. Whereas on a river, that 19-incher could be not even 4 pounds. So that's on the big water. I think weight trumps length. And that's where, again, don't get me going. I'm not a huge weigh in at the, you know, take the fish up on the stage and weigh him in person. But there is there's an argument to be made that if all the boat tournaments went to Major League Fishing, which I love, you go to Sturgeon Bay and one guy catches a 19-incher that's 4, and another guy catches a 19-incher that's 5.25. Boy, that's 2 different fish. So, you know, they'll figure it out. But we got to get you up there sometime, Ryan. You're not that far in Tennessee.
Man, there are a lot of places that I'm wanting to go to. I've always stuck around, you know, my local waters, because, you know, I've had a hard time, you know, trying to put it all together and finding the fish. And this past year, 2019, was actually my first year actually doing decent at bass fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I guess it's been about 7 years now since I started. But I always said, like, why travel to go fish somewhere when I can't even catch fish around here?
Well,
So,
you know, you make it, you know, I'll tell you, here's the point. Obviously, Wisconsin, top to bottom, and Tennessee's got great places. I mean, top to bottom, Wisconsin, I mean, you drive 8 hours from where I am right now, you got the Chequamegon Bay up there. The limit on smallmouth is 1 fish, 22 inches. That's almost, I mean, that's unheard of. But the negative, we're very fortunate to have our small house on Lake Michigan in Sturgeon Bay. But what happens is, if I drive the 170 miles door to door, I don't go anywhere else. My boat's up there. I keep 2 or 3 fishing kayaks up there. I keep fishing kayaks. I have kayak trailers in both locations. If I lived up there, for example, which I'd love to do someday, then maybe I jump in the car and go to northern Wisconsin with my boat, or up to the Menominee River, which is on the other side of Green Bay. I mean, I can make it across to the Menominee River literally, if it's calm, in 15 minutes in my boat. But then the wind could shift, and I might have to hitchhike home to get my trailer 90 miles away and go back and get my boat. So yeah, no, there's a lot of great places, and a person can waste a lot of time driving and going to places if you've got decent places near your house.
yeah, I do have good places around me. Some of them I just recently found out were as good as they are. Some of them are very highly pressured, which could be the issues why I had issues, you know, fighting them, because, you know, those high pressured waters, or, you got to give them either something that they don't see every day, or present it perfect. And, you know, being new, probably wasn't doing any of that.
Well, you know, here's my, obviously, and you know this, but if you find an area that is pretty good that's not pressured, keep your mouth shut. We have a monster website out of our area called Lake Link that numbers of pages looked at, it ranks in the top 3 or 4 in the country. And I remember quite a few years ago, a guy put up a post about a little river southwest of here. Man, he said, I caught 2 18-inchers. And he was bragging about it. And 2 weeks later, there's another post, and he wondered why, when he got to his little river in the parking area, he couldn't find a parking place. That's because he opened his mouth and he shouldn't have. You know, that's just, you know, I mean, if you got a good friend that you can trust, but if you find something, you know, keep it to yourself.
Well, that makes me think of something this weekend. I actually got a tip on a spot that they said was a good place to go to fish. And so I went and checked it out this weekend. and like I just went to the boat ramp just to look around, and got to talking to this gentleman that was there. Said, he was in his 60s. Said he'd been fishing out there his entire life. He was just fishing from the bank this time, but he said he's got a boat, and this is a river, and look, well, um, anyways, he started showing me pictures of fish that he's caught over the years of this place. A lot of spotted bass, like big spotted bass, and a lot of just he had like some big stripers and just all kinds of big fish on here. I'm like, this is crazy that all these big fish are in here. I've never heard anybody talk about fishing this river before.
Well, chances are he's kept his mouth somewhat shut. The other thing with rivers, typically, if you get away from the dams and the bridges, you're going to do a lot better, because most people, they go where it's convenient and they fish from shore or whatever, and they're by the dams and they're by the bridges. And if you are in your kayak and you can paddle a mile or two, or you're in your waders and you're somewhere where you're going to walk a mile or two, you're certainly going to do, tremendously better. The other I want to mention, and I've kind of covered for your listeners, some really, good lures. And also, Ryan, I mean, certainly I communicate with a group of about 800 to 900 smallie enthusiasts that have, they come to my talks and stuff like that. And if any of your podcast people, email me at smalliecentral@gmail.com with a question, I'm pretty good at getting back to them. The other thing I got to tell you, we all learned something new, and I showed you literally my small little arsenal that's helped me catch the majority of all those thousands of smallmouth bass. And I'm going to show you something right now again, a lot of people like to use swim baits. They're very similar to the Kalins. You just swim them slow and steady. I'm holding here a Kitech 3.3 inch fat swing. And I have to tell you that for the very first time at the end of September through the end of October, I used this, and I used it in some pretty deep water for me, 25 to 30 feet, swimming it on a 1/4, 1/5, and 1/3 ounce, both the VMC mushroom head jig as well as Z-Man has some professional grade, both the shrooms as well as another one of their jigs. And I got to tell you, it was phenomenal. The negative to it is, as great as this is, it's very, very fragile, meaning where, on a Kalins, I might catch 10 or 15 fish before it starts having a problem. And even when it does, I can bite a little bit off the end and re-thread it. By the way, the Kalins were designed to swim tail down from the hook. It doesn't matter. It still does the same thing. But man, the Kitech is unbelievable. But if you can catch more than 2 or 3 fish on one after biting off the end and everything else, you're going to do pretty good. But this little guy, I had some really great days at the end of October on the big water, swimming it in 25 or 30 feet of water with a fairly heavy jig, and it was great. And that's now one more item in my arsenal, which is, as I showed you earlier, all those items don't even come close to fitting in my soup bowl. So I do try to keep it pretty simple, because more lures are produced to catch fishermen than they do to catch fish. So I've tried to narrow it down to what really, really works for me. And fortunately, it's not me saying, oh yeah, by the way, this year I caught 150 smallmouth. No, I'm out, catching certainly a lot of fish every year on this small group of lures.
It's funny you said that, because with the the lures being designed to catch the fishermen, because I learned that the hard way. I can't tell you how many things I bought because I loved the color, and the fish didn't seem to like the color too much. But I was actually telling somebody that the other day. They were looking at something like, "Oh, that looks cool. That looks good." I'm like, "But does it look good to the fish or just you?" So that's
Well, and the other thing that this multiplies out, Ryan, and let me, to all the fishermen that are listening, once you start, okay, I do spinner baits, I do crankbaits, I do jerk baits, I do topwater, I do this, I do that. Well, now you're in many cases looking at a whole variety of rods, and I'm fortunate enough that for the last 22 years, I'm into my 23rd year of being on the St. Croix pro staff, so I've been very fortunate to be able to fish some great rods. But if you look at all the rods that I have, you're going to see the majority of them are 6'8" to 7'1" medium lights and mediums, meaning they're all good for the Ned rig. They're all good for throwing the swim baits. I do jump to a 7'6" medium light, extra fast, for some of the swim baits, but for the most part, and you've got people that, and you've got a rod sitting there behind you. You've got a lot of people that, oh, I want to try bait casters. I want to do this. I've got a lot of rods, and I have one bait cast rod. I have a Mojo 7'1" medium heavy, extra fast with one bait cast reel. And I got that rod last year. I've never used it. And the other thing is you've got, and again, I consider, I'm grateful that I can fish, the Legend X, which is a $400+ rod. But I have to tell you, and just a tip to everyone listening, if you like St. Croix rods, I would say take that same amount of money and buy 3 Mojo Bass rods. The Mojo Bass $140, $150 comes with the Avid blank, which the Avids are $200 to $250. So you jump to that blank on $140 or $150 rod. I absolutely love the Mojo rods. So you don't need to break the bank to have the rods. But the nice thing with what I'm using here, pretty much everything I've shown you, I could grab, honestly, a 6'10" medium light extra fast Mojo or Legend X, and I could fish every single item here with that rod, except I like to go to a light action when I'm throwing the teeny wee crawfish. So, but I could probably throw it with the medium light. So what I've done is I've not only narrowed my lure selection down to what works and works well in a variety of situations, it's allowed me to narrow my group of many rods down to a lot of those, those lengths and those actions.
It's awesome. And I carry one spinning combo with me. It's like a medium light, and I pretty much just use that for either the Ned rig or there's a company here in Tennessee. They've been around for a while, but surprisingly, a lot of people outside of the Middle Tennessee area don't seem to have ever heard of it. But it's called Slider, and they got these little jigs. It's almost like a bullet head.
I've heard of Slider.
Offset. Yeah, and they got these like these 4-inch worms, little paddle tail worms. I like to throw on there. But other than that, I'm using a bait caster, and usually I think I carry one rod that's a medium and a bait caster, and then
let me again show you guys, everybody. I want you to see all these lures. How big are they? They're all 1 1/4 inch to 3.3 inches. And I want to tell you, here's from a guy who's caught almost 23,500 smallmouth. Big lures, yes, catch big fish and occasionally small fish. Finesse presentations, catch fish of all sizes and catch really big fish. And I will tell you the one, here's the little tip. And again, you look at rivers, the medium lights are fabulous for the Ned rig. August of 2018, last 2 years ago, on Lake Michigan, I don't lose fish. When you're using just one hook, you don't lose fish. And I'm Ned rigging, and on the 12th and the 14th, not only did I catch some very big fish, up to 6 pounds and 21.5 inches, I unfortunately lost 5 or 6 4 to 5.5 pound fish, and it was driving me crazy. And all I could figure was that with the Ned rig, on these really big fish, now we're not talking 16, 17 inch fish, we're talking 19.5 to 21 inch fish. My thought was with their bigger mouths, and I'm feeling and I'm setting the hook with the medium light, I may, in some cases, not all, not been getting enough power into the jaw. So 2019, up in Door County, Sturgeon Bay, I didn't fish any medium lights. I only fished mediums. I think that little bit stiffer rod made a difference because it just gave me a little extra backbone to set the hook on the Ned rig. It's not as big a deal when you're doing a swim bait because when they hit a Kalen's or a Kitech, boom, they're setting the hook themselves. A Ned rig, they're sometimes sucking it up a little bit, and you've got to set the hook. So when I go to big water, I jump to a medium action. So, just a little tip there.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I got a couple questions that I want to ask you. I try to ask these towards the end of every interview, just to get different people's perspective. But let's say that somebody brand new to bass fishermen comes up to you and they're wanting to get into it. And so they're going to go to whatever store they're going to go to they want to pick up 3 lures to get started. What 3 lures would you tell them to pick up to initially get started in bass fishing?
They're right in my hand.
I had a feeling this was going to be a pretty easy one for you to answer.
Well, it is easy because these are all easy presentations. I mean, in all the years of talking about the Kalen's Lunker Grub, I had one guy on my group email me, he goes, Bill, I used it. I had no luck. And I emailed him back. I go, how did you use it? He said, oh, I was bouncing it along the bottom. I go, no, swim it as slow as you can and steady. If you touch the bottom, speed it up. Everybody can do that. The same with something like a Kitech or another swim type bait. And of course, and I want to tell you something, don't be afraid of the Ned rig. And again, my wife is downstairs and Becky's coordinated. She loves walking and wading on rivers. But I got to tell you, she's fished the Ned rig a number of times and she does really well with it. So these are all really easy to set up. I mean, one hook through the lure, and they're really easy to fish. And the nice thing is, for a newbie, these all could be fished on the same darn rod. If you said, hey, Bill, I want to get these, what should I get? I go, overall, get yourself like a 6'10" or 7' medium light St. Croix Premier, Mojo, or Triumph, and you're ready to go. And you can buy for $59, you can buy a Pfluger President size 30, and you are good to go and fishing with better stuff than most of your friends. So there's my answer. Easy.
Hey, I like it. And I just wanted to say on top of that, the spinning combo I carry with me, I've got a $20 quantum spinning reel that I've used for probably close to 4 years now. But maybe even longer than that. It might be closer to 5 years. And It seems like spinning reels, you can get away with going a little cheaper sometimes if you have to.
What they're doing, Ryan, is I think in the last 10 years, they're making them better. And that's where a $20 or $30 reel, I typically say at $50. You know, you look at a $59 Fluger President, you look at that $59 to $99 when you're looking at the Fuego, you're looking at the Revo X, you're looking at the Supreme, you're looking at the President and the President XT. I mean, most of us could live our lives with those reels. They're phenomenal. And although every once in a while a good thing comes along, like I put out to, you might have seen it on Facebook, where the Abu Garcia MGX Revo, $299. They've got them on sale on their website for $149, and with a special code 120. Tough to pass up.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. So, anyways.
All right. So my next question I like to ask people: for somebody brand new to bass fishermen, what's one piece of advice you would give them?
Well, I think a good piece of advice is don't get nuts with buying a lot of stuff. Start off simple. And I joked with you before we got going, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. I use it, keep it simple, Schultz. And the point being is when I'm doing, I do talks at the biggest paddle event in the country I have for 10 years, Canoecopia. I do talks at, the biggest shows in the Midwest. And what I try to do is I want people to walk away with some really good things they can get, but not have to spend a ridiculous amount of money or buy too much. Point being, if I'm talking, kayak paddles, the paddle is the one thing that most people don't spend enough money on. But I feel that anytime this is my opinion, I'm fortunate enough to be fishing with, Bending Branches Pro Angler carbons that are 25 ounces. But for $199, somebody can get a Manta Ray carbon that's 29.5 ounces. My point being is, if someone walks away from my talk on Saturday and they thought they needed to spend $250 or $300 on a fishing rod, and they go, oh my God, Bill told me I could buy a $140 St. Croix Mojo, I am so happy because now I can use that other $100 and $150 to buy myself a $59 reel and a bunch of Z-Man, Kalins, and Kitech stuff. And now I'm ready to go. So my advice is, before you buy a lot of stuff, do a little fishing and maybe talk to some of your buddies and see what works. Sometimes it's tough to do because, I've been in the store and the guy walks in next to me and says, you know what, I'm going to Canada. What's your best rod? What's your best reel? And tell me what are the best lures to use. And obviously the store guy is going to give them a whole litany of things. Whereas if that person talked to me, they'd be spending less money.
I like it.
Yeah, keep it simple.
I think that is a big issue with people when they first start out is they don't know a whole lot about it, so they just start buying everything everybody tells them they need.
And you know what, Ryan? Everybody, I mean, many people have had success. Tons of people have had success with what I'm talking about, but other people have had success with other things. And I'm going to, again, when you communicate on a regular basis with 800 plus people that are all decent smalley guys, and you make your recommendations, and then you start getting dozens and dozens and dozens of emails back with people having success, that makes me feel good because what it tells me is what I'm preaching is working. Here's the deal. Did Kalins call me up and say, oh, by the way, Bill, we'd like to send you 50 packages of the Kalins Lunker Grub so that you can talk about it? No, I used the Kalins Lunker Grub, had phenomenal success. And then I contacted the company. You want to know what they said to me? They said, "Oh, Bill, thank you so much. We'll sell them to you at our best price." And you know what I said? I just said, "You know what, guys? I'm going to show you why you're going to want me to just use them." By the middle of that winter, during my talks, the president of the company called me up and said, "Bill, thank you." Point being is, I want to tell people about things that I've had success with. I don't want to tell them about things, Ryan, that somebody just said, "Oh, Bill, you do all these talks, you write all these articles. Here is this. Would you talk about it?" And I go, "No. But if I use it and I have tremendous luck with it, hey, then I'll talk about it, but not before." I don't want anybody, I don't like people to say, "Hey, Bill, you were telling me all about this. That's a lousy lure. Why were you getting so excited about it?" I'd rather say, "You know what? Why I got excited about it is because from August 1st until the end of this season, I've caught 3,500 smallmouth on the Ned rig using the TRD and the Shrooms jig." Those things I find are tough to argue.
Yeah, can't argue with that.
No, and that's what I'd rather do. So.
Well, Bill, I appreciate you coming on here. You're full of knowledge, and you seem pretty natural with this. I guess you got to be if you're doing seminars and stuff. Love to have you back on here some other time.
Anytime.
Talk some more about it.
Anytime. I enjoyed it, Ryan, and here's my invite to you. Before I get too old, come on up to Sturgeon Bay sometime. Make a road trip, and we'll we'll go out. You don't even have to bring your kayak because I got kayaks up there. Or it's always fun to jump in a boat with a 200 Mercury, and then we can make some big runs. So.
Hey, if I can, we'll make it happen.
Yeah, and if I ever get through Tennessee, I'll
I'm going to be breaking down a river that's actually really close to me that I don't fish a whole lot, the Duck River. I'm going to be trying to break it down this year. It's kind of a more shallow river that's known for smallmouth, and I didn't realize how great it was until this past year. So I'm going to be hitting it more often. So you ever make it down here, you can show me how I need to fish this river.
Well, here's what we're going to do. I'm not going to send you you can get the Ned rig stuff, but I'm going to send you some samples of what I want you to get. But what I will do, I will send you a few packages of the Kalins, because that is that's a great shallow river presentation. And especially you need to use in the shallow rivers that you're 2 and 3 feet deep. You use a little like a 1/16 ounce jig like this, and you're good to go. So we'll get your address. I'll send you a few things.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll pay you back for them just to give them a shot. Real quick, do you want to give a shout out to your sponsors and maybe go over where people can contact you, like shout out your email again, or if you got social media you want, or people can follow you or all that good stuff?
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing is, and this is what I I tell people when I'm doing my talks. I'll probably have 100 people at my talk on Saturday, and I actually hand out a little slip of paper that with my smalleycentral@gmail.com email. And you know what they can do? And I see no other speakers doing this. They can email me if they come to my talk and get a PDF of my presentation, which is pretty neat. But anyway, so smalleycentral@gmail.com. If you've got any questions. The other thing, and again, the companies that I'm involved with are all companies that I used before. My first 1998, my first pro staff was St. Croix Rod, and I like to say that at the point I'm going, why? And I said, I better start doing something to make this worthwhile. So in 1999, I wrote my first article. 2000, I did the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel Sports Show for the first time, and fortunately, some other pro staffs, Jackson Kayak, Bending Branches paddles, Aquabound paddles, Malone auto racks and trailers, Mercury Marine, Yarcraft boats, previously Crestliner, Kalins, and then probably another 15 to 20 sponsors. I have a lot of fun, Ryan. And I don't think if any of your listeners though are in the Northern Illinois or Wisconsin area, on April 22nd, I will be doing my 10th Smalley Night Out event. And it has been proclaimed the best smallmouth evening in the country. I charge a whopping $16. I pack a room that's decorated in antique canoes with 130 plus people. People show up 2 hours in advance. They can get a meal. I do a talk. I bring in another top speaker. I have Doug Schreiber, who had a TV show and a top big water smallie guy. And you know what's neat about it, Ryan? Nobody leaves early, because at 8:45 on the dot, when my second speaker's done, I then do a free drawing. And last year I gave away $7,400 worth of great items from all of the companies and more that I just mentioned. St. Croix rods, Orion cooler, paddle. Hey, even a trip to Door County with me for two, which is worth about $500 if I was a guide. So if anybody's in that Northern Illinois or Wisconsin area and wants to come to Smalley Night Out, it's a fun event that people love. So anyways, thank you so much for giving me the chance to be on your podcast. I'll look forward to hearing what people think about what I said, and I'll look forward to being on again sometime, Ryan.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get you back on here again sometime in the future. But I appreciate you coming on, Bill, and talking about this. And everybody, go check out that Smalley Night Out he was talking about. I know we got a lot of listeners up in the Illinois area and stuff, since that's where the podcast originated at, is in Illinois.
Well, I will tell you that I was not, again, in the states that have smallmouth alliances, they do a great job. Nonprofits that really push, smallmouth conservation. I was happy and they do a great event in Illinois, and a lot of people from Northern Illinois are on my group and make the drive 50, 60, 70, 100 miles to come up for the event. So I think if you want to come, just email me and I'll make sure you have the information.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you.
You're welcome.
And everybody else, get out there to his Smalley's Night Out. Check him out. Other than that, guys, tight lines, smooth paddling.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. We'll see you.
Go check out the website, guys. Paddle, the letter N and fin.com. Also check out YouTube, youtube.com/paddle-and-fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest, feel free to email us at paddle, the letter N and fin @gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're doing giveaways, announcements, things like that at Facebook and Instagram at paddle and fin. Shout out to our show supporters: Rocktown Adventures, Loveland Canoe and Kayak, Hammered Lures, Fish Mob Lures, TRC Covers, Ketch Products. Go to ketchproducts.com. You could put the paddle and fin logo right on your catch board. Don't forget to go over and pick up your JigMasters Jigs. Use promo code PNF20 and save 20% today. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. It helps grow the audience, helps others find our podcast. So please drop a 5-star rating in on the podcast platform you're listening on. Don't forget about the recycled plastics program, you guys. Take your used plastic baits, put them in an envelope, mail them to the address in the show notes. Our man Eric Richards at Hammered Lures melts those down, makes new baits, and donates them to various chapters of Heroes on the Water.